is Alan Horn, and my book review is on the book titled On the Brink, The Great Lakes in the 21st Century by author Dave Dempsey. The Great Lakes provides numerous resources to mankind, and because of this, mistreatment to the largest freshwater lake system on Earth as man has used the lakes for his benefit, conservation has taken a back seat and the lakes have suffered. Canals have been torn out of the landscape, alien species have been introduced, and pollution of many forms has lined the beaches and infected the waters. In the last century, conservation tactics have been implemented to conserve these lakes, but not nearly enough is being done. Unguided approaches to saving these lakes is increasing the amount of time to truly save these waters. The author, Dave Dempsey, points out that there needs to be an intelligent approach in Great Lake conservation. Certain individuals have made great strides in protecting our Great Lakes. Dempsey tells the stories of some of these people and shows the courage that they had to fight for the survival of the Great Lakes. Dempsey shows the abilities that one person encourages the rest of us to do the same. One may think that only powerful politicians, big government, and big business will ever have a true impact on conservation change, but author Dempsey shows us that this simply is not true. For example, Gary, Indiana resident Beth Sheehan vigorously campaigned for a Dunes State Park. As long ago as 1923, she lobbied federal politicians to create state and federal parks to preserve these sand dunes of northern Indiana. At this time in America, the creative way that she did this was to display fancy pictures of people relaxing in the dunes and having an excellent time. This beach scene won over the politicians and the parks were created. Not all politicians can be viewed as dirty or viable. The late Senator Paul Douglas advocated for intense protection of the Indiana sand dunes. Upon learning of a proposed harbor on the Indiana shoreline to be sustained for massive amounts of commerce, in 1958 Douglas proposed a 3.5-mile shoreline conservancy. The area was the exact area intended for that original harbor. Upon learning of the intended harbor, the senator said the people of the Midwest were about to be shut off from access to Lake Michigan, and the beautiful dunes would be despoiled into a jungle of steel and asphalt. The worst features of our civilization threatened to invade what had been an earthly paradise. The gross national product from the area, as measured in dollars, would probably increase, but so would the smoke, polluted water, crime, and sexual license. Ugliness would replace beauty. There would be more jobs, but a larger proportion of nervous breakdowns and more inmates of mental institutions. Could this be regarded as progress? After nearly a decade of battle in Congress eventually passed the shoreline project that the senator requested, but only partially of what he originally wanted. The harbor was allowed to be introduced in the middle of his project, but at a scaled-down size, so both a success and a failure for the senator, Paul Douglas. Now that I've mentioned the politician's side of it, well, some of it, and the individual side of it, we need to understand what the author, Dave Dempsey, was trying to get at as far as his approach of conservation. Since modern conservation was introduced in the early 20th century, there was no concrete approach. A user's manual did not come with conservation. And as mentioned before, there are 3 different entities that were always attempting to do the right thing when it came to preserving the waters of the Great Lakes. Those entities are business, government, and individuals. Dempsey introduced conservation in a different way. Rather than having multiple groups individually focused on conservation. We would rather have an ecosystem approach. If conservation is taken seriously with this ecosystem mindset, we will appreciate all species as well as habitats and have an understanding that all aspects inside the lake system depend on each other. Not one item is more or less important than the next. Dempsey defines this ecosystem approach simply as 1. Considering humans as part of a complex natural system that includes the air, water, land, and all living things. Addressing the decline of the lakes holistically, considering the possibility of unanticipated consequences from proposed actions, and dealing with the problems of ecosystem by addressing their causes, rather than treating the systems. So, when a problem is realized in the Great Lakes system, we need to realize why that problem is there, and not just simply go after the problem and try to eliminate it. Under this approach, maintenance of the ecosystem depends upon the consistency of man-made standards, laws, and boundaries with those that have evolved through natural processes. Dempsey viewed the Great Lakes and man's interaction with the Great Lakes as man not being superior to the Great Lakes, but man simply being just a part of the Great Lakes system. And it was up to us as being the intelligent creatures to conserve the resources of the water, protect all habitats in and around the water, and protect all species that are in or around the water. A fine example of how conservation needs to be realized for the Great Lakes is the invasive species of the zebra mussel. First discovered in 1988, this mussel has tremendously thrown off the Great Lakes ecosystem and is the reason for a steadily decline among numerous fish species. The zebra mussel is eating a food source for the fish and is slowly killing off several species. This mussel found its way into the Great Lakes system due to the man-made canal systems created to make our shipping system easier and more efficient. Now we have a hindrance that greatly affects the Great Lakes ecosystem and will be next to impossible to eliminate. The canal system was created in the early 20th century, and they were still making it as recently as the late 1950s. And all major industrial complexes around the shorelines of the Great Lakes had their eyes on the massive amounts of money that could be made from generating products and using the waterways to move their products. So many people were all for the canals, massive shipping, larger ships, larger canals, larger locks, larger dams, and all of this led to open waterways. Ships could come and go as they please from anywhere around the world, and now we have dozens of species, including the zebra mussel. Moving on, many laws and acts have been introduced by North American governments to protect the Great Lakes. National, state, and local governments have all contributed. But as author Dempsey declares, just because there is a law in place does not mean it is truly effective. For example, inside the Clean Water Act, its original wordage was proposed to be, in quotations, this is from page 205, any new or increased discharge of toxins from a factory or municipal sewage point would be prohibited under the Clean Water Act. Sounds great, but the language sounds spectacular, but business was able to influence a lawmaker to make the law less strict, the power of a lobbyist before the law was finally passed. And the lobbyists got the law changed to sound like this. When finalized, the law read all outstanding international resource waters, which would permit the total amount of discharges to increase if the plants expanded and the volume of their discharge increased. This, we know, would take away from that zero discharge goal originally mentioned. As you can see, there has been and still is much influence by business entities on the lawmakers that create these laws. Until this is fixed, we need a well-rounded, respectable view for the lakes. In conclusion, On the Brink by Dave Dempsey offers many stories and examples of mismanagement of the Great Lakes. Additionally, it offers hope for the future if we can come together with Dave Dempsey's views. A more respectable approach to conservation will be realized. Much abuse over the last centuries has affected the lakes deeply, and to repair the lakes to their natural state will be next to impossible. Additionally, we cannot simply pass laws that just have a catchy title or only benefit one entity. We need to take a well-rounded approach if we are going to do this the right and proper way. Many mistakes have been made in Great Lake conservation, and we continue to make them today. Only with scientific research by subject matter experts, positive input and participation from business, politicians who are willing to stand up to the lobbyists and do what's right for their constituents, and active citizens will we extend the life of our Great Lakes for generations to come.